Hey everyone, this is Sean Cargill from Violent Gamer, and this is a review for Wargame European Escalation, and it is a deep strategy game from the creators of Ruse, Eugene Systems. If you didn't like Ruse, don't worry, because I didn't like Ruse, and this game has a lot of things that are far different than Ruse. For instance, it's not World War II, it's about the Cold War turning into a real war, and it doesn't have any of those card-based abilities or fast-paced gameplay. This has a much slower strategic gameplay that focuses on supply and recon and strategy. That isn't to say Ruse didn't have any strategy, but this is a far different strategy than that of Ruse. The game has a pretty hefty single player, but multiplayer is the main focus. And single player puts you through a whole bunch of different campaign scenarios. There's about 22 missions in total, and all of these missions give you secondary and main objectives, and when you complete one of those you unlock command stars. Command stars are used for unlocking new units, which you also earn in multiplayer, and they both coincide with each other. So if you unlock new units in single player, they also unlock in your armory for multiplayer, and vice versa. Single player has a much more limited focus on units. It will only let you use units based on the country for the mission you're on, but they still give you a lot of options for that. And they also do a good job with mission variety. The first whole set of missions is pretty much all attack missions where you're NATO and you're aggressively pushing, while the second set of missions are mostly all defense, or at least ones where you go and help allies and then defend that area until you get more reinforcements or whatnot. And they all give you a lot of secondary objectives and primary objectives and a lot of options to unlock the stars. And the secondary objectives aren't always that easy, so it's not very easy to get like 100% of the stars all the time, but they still do a good job of balancing everything. One of the bad things about single player is the tutorial. They didn't really do it all that well. The first mission is pretty well done for a tutorial, but it doesn't tell you everything, and everything else is spread out throughout half the campaign. And this is a big problem for people if they go straight into multiplayer, because they will just get destroyed and it'll be unpleasant. Much like I did the first time, because I started playing in the beta and there was no tutorial in the beta whatsoever. You can of course do skirmishes though, to try to figure things out with the AI, and it uses the same AI that it seems to use in the campaign, which is pretty good AI. They're aggressive, they seem to know what they're doing, but they're not overly aggressive, and they don't feel unbalanced. They don't feel like they're just getting random units just to make the difficulty harder on you if you select a harder mode or whatnot. Which finally brings me to multiplayer. Most people will be getting the game for multiplayer. You're not going to see the single player for this game and go, oh, I'm getting it for that. Even though the single player is pretty long, multiplayer is absolutely the main focus. There's a lot of normal things you would expect to see, like leagues, ranked games, non-ranked, teams, friends list, but there are also a few little weird functionality problems that don't really detract from anything. They just kind of make it annoying to navigate the menus. For instance, there's things like, instead of switching team by clicking onto a spot, which you would normally do, which would make sense, you have to press the team, which doesn't say switch, it just says team. And there's quite a few little things like that that don't really do anything bad, they're just odd. But multiplayer works pretty well. It has a lot of the same technical problems that a lot of games do, like players dropping at the beginning of the match, or hosts leaving and screwing everything up. But for the most part, you can always get into matches since there's a lot of people playing, and there's not any weird problems like sync errors or punk buster or anything like that. It's generally really easy to jump right into multiplayer. And games can be really long or really short because the host can set the amount of points that each team has to reach. And that actually brings me to my negative about multiplayer. There's really only one gameplay mode right now, which is destruction. That has each team going around these big maps, conquering areas to earn more points for their team, which are basically resources. And the maps are big, the combat's good, the strategic options are all good, but there's only that one multiplayer mode. And it has you trying to get a specific number of points which have to come from kills or just destroying enemy units in general. They could really make multiplayer feel a lot better if they added in some like objective modes or co-op or anything other than that one mode. The one mode works perfectly good and it's fun, but there still needs to be something more. With that said, the whole package of the game between multiplayer and single player is really good. It's a really good value for only $40. You have multiplayer that'll last a long time, you have single player that'll take a long time to go through, and it has persistent units, and it has unlocks that matter for both multiplayer and single player, and there's just generally a lot to like about the game, especially if you're a fan of deep strategy games. The game doesn't have a demo, unfortunately, and they're not planning to do one. If you have a friend that's interested in getting it, it's a great game to get into for that. But it's also very possible to get into it just by yourself and play random games with people or meet people online and join teams. And multiplayer does a really good job of not punishing you all that much for being low rank, fighting higher rank people. Sure, they'll have a lot more units unlocked than you, but you still have pretty good options with the base decks, and even playing one single player mission will give you quite a few new unlocks. And that's it for this review. Thanks for watching, and if you want to read about it instead, I'm going to do a write-up as well over at violentgamerreviews.com.